And are we happy to make a start, Ed?
Yeah, that sounds good.
Brilliant. So, sorry, just before I hand over to you, I just want to say thank you very much for attending the last session of Student Volunteering Week. And we're very lucky to have Ed from the Go Abroad team to come and talk about the support that you can receive through if you were looking to do some international volunteering virtually. And Ed has also brought along with him a couple of students who have had that experience themselves. So you can hear firsthand about their experiences of the support they received and what their volunteering involved. So with that, thank you very much, Ed. I will now hand over to you.
Thanks, Dee. And yeah, thanks again, and thanks from me as well to everyone for attending. Fantastic to have you all on the call. Can you all hear me okay? I just saw myself freezing there for a second, but yeah, hopefully. So I'm Eduardo Lees. I'm the Global Opportunities Manager here at Goldsmiths. So the Global Opportunities team look after opportunity, kind of support students to gain international experience through studying, working or volunteering abroad, or as a result of this year, also gaining experience virtually, so virtual global opportunities. So I'm going to spend the next kind of initially 10 minutes just talking you through some of the opportunities to support you to volunteer abroad. And then we'll hear from Mika and Lauren, who have both participated in the programme in the past, to hear about their experiences. And then I'll give you a little bit of an insight into how you might find some volunteering placements abroad and the kind of support that you'll get as well. So I hope that sounds all right. If you do have questions, then we'll obviously have a Q&A at the end where you can feel free to kind of ask things kind of with your camera on if you want to. But if you want to ask things in the chat, then do drop them in the chat. I might not be able to answer them until the end, or Lauren and Mika might be able to answer them if you have specific questions for them as well. So just as a start, the Global Opportunities team supports students to complete international experience in a number of different ways. So we provide funding to students to work abroad in Europe for 2 to 3 months. That funding comes from the Erasmus program, which I'll talk about in a minute. We also support students to complete study, work or volunteer abroad opportunities for 2 months or less, supported with funding from Santander universities and Goldsmiths. And then, as I mentioned, we also support students to complete virtual global opportunities. So that's kind of doing something from your own home, but with an international element. That's also funded by Santander universities and Goldsmiths. And something that I'm not going to talk about in this session, but that we also support are for students to study abroad at a partner university for a term. That's again funded by Erasmus. Yeah, I won't cover that in detail, but we will be having events talking about that coming up. I'm also going to give you a little bit of an impact on kind of the impact on COVID and Brexit and the Erasmus update, which I will move on to now. So as you can imagine, as a result of coronavirus, it has impacted the opportunities to gain international experience at Goldsmiths, but we do have mitigations in place to try and manage that. So as I've mentioned already, virtual global opportunities, so opportunities that you can do from home without the travel aspect. But also we're hoping that we will be able to support students over the summer and next year to go abroad, to study and work abroad, obviously depending on the situation of coronavirus and how it develops. But something to bear in mind if you are planning to go abroad over the summer and you do get funding for us, all placements that you find must have a coronavirus kind of process in place to manage your health and safety. You'll have to have appropriate insurance cover, which will have to include coronavirus cover as well. The Foreign and Commonwealth and Development Office guidance must allow travel. So at the moment, people aren't allowed to travel. So we wouldn't be able to support people to go right now if people went at the moment. But we're hoping that over the summer that will change. And basically, we will make a final decision on whether placements can take place abroad by the 1st of June. So it may be that we can't, until the 1st of June, it will kind of be up in the air slightly. So there's a kind of element of uncertainty, I'm afraid, this year, which I appreciate is frustrating. We'll also ask students to sign up to a code of conduct on kind of managing their own health and safety whilst abroad. So, for example, if you had symptoms of coronavirus, that you would stay at home and isolate and things like that. So these are just some context to kind of provide a safety framework around the placements that we offer. You'll also may have heard about the impact of Brexit and the Erasmus programme. So the Erasmus programme is the European Union's education programme, which does support a whole range of international opportunities, including for students to study and work abroad. As a result of our departure from the European Union, the UK government has decided to not participate in the future Erasmus programme, and instead to create an opportunity, a new programme, called the Touring Scheme, which will support students to go abroad from the UK. The Erasmus programme, there is still funding from the Erasmus programme. We do have funding to support students to take part in the Erasmus for the next couple of years. So, there is still an opportunity. So please don't panic about that. We can still support students to study and work abroad this year with Erasmus funding, and we will also get touring funding as well. So actually, for the next couple of years, there will be kind of potentially increased funding, which is fantastic. The other thing to bear in mind is if you're going to Europe and you have a UK passport, then there may be new immigration requirements going to study or to work in another country. So that's something that we will support you in terms of sharing some guidance, but it's just something to be aware of as well as another thing to consider. I can see there's just a quick question, which I will take. Is there still a chance for current third year students to get to travel abroad once things settle down? I will be covering that, Sandhya, and yes, there are opportunities for third year students, and these opportunities are open to you as well. So why is international experience important? So hopefully the reason that you're here is that you already know this, but just to think about this, it obviously gives you a chance to experience different work and academic styles and environments. You have the chance to, students have reported to us, and I did an international placement myself, and it definitely helps to develop self-confidence and independence. You're having to navigate a whole nother country, a whole nother system, communicate in different language, potentially, or across language barriers, for example, which helps to give you greater intercultural awareness and communication skills. It also gives you, and in particular, the virtual global opportunities will give you the digital skills to succeed in international workplace. And increasingly in my career to date, I've definitely had to connect with people without even meeting them face to face over kind of using Teams or Zoom or kind of video conferencing. So these skills are really important in your employability. They're also on a kind of both in terms of a career point of view and on a personal level, they help you get a chance to build new relationships and networks for future collaboration, potentially to set up new jobs in the future, or just to have somewhere to go and stay in the future if you're visiting another country. And they also give you an opportunity to kind of be a bit different from other applicants in job applications, which is really important. As someone who's done quite a lot of recruitment, when I see somebody who's got international experience on their CV, it really draws me to that application, and I can already tell that they probably will have some of the skills I'll be looking for. So definitely something to consider there. So I'm just going to go through the three different kind of funding options that might support you to volunteer abroad. I know this is specifically, you're kind of here to specifically think about volunteering abroad. And we've got, I guess, three different funding options that might help you to do that. So volunteering or working abroad for 2 to 3 months in Europe. So this comes under this the scheme called Erasmus traineeships, which we do have funding for this year. So kind of volunteer placements can be before or after graduation, and students in the past have kind of done a whole range of different volunteering projects, including delivering an educational project in Finland, for example, that was working with young people looking at kind of theatre in schools in Finland. So that's just one example of the kind of volunteering projects that people have done funded by Erasmus. The thing with this funding is that you get a monthly stipend, so between 470 to 520 euros per month, depending on the different countries that you're kind of based in. And if you're a student from a household income of under 25,000, then you get an additional 20 euros per month on top of that as a kind of additional support. We also have additional funding to support if you're going to a country with a different language, then additional funding for language learning. We're trying to encourage more green travel, so we have a green travel fund where we can support some students to take non-plane, to not travel by plane, sorry. And we also have additional funding support for students with disabilities if you needed additional support during your placement. Erasmus provides a large amount of additional funding there. Yes, this funding is available to international students, this Erasmus funding. So this is available to all students. And as I said, you can apply before graduation, but you can also go on an Erasmus traineeship after graduation, as long as you apply before you graduate. And I think Lauren can talk a little bit about that in her section, as she did exactly that. So this is a kind of longer term project for 2 to 3 months and it must be in Europe, but you could use this funding to do volunteering, and it is a grant. You don't have to give the funding back. If you're thinking about volunteering for a shorter amount of time, so for under 2 months, for example, we do have funding from Santander universities and Goldsmiths to support with this. In the past, students have volunteered at a refugee centre in Greece and a kind of NGO in Sri Lanka, for example, just to give you a couple of examples. The funding here is flexible in the terms that we can support students to go worldwide. All students, including international students, can apply for up to £500 towards the costs. And then if you meet our widening participation criteria, then you can apply for up to £1,500. So you can look on our website in terms of what our widening participation criteria is, but there's a number of different categories that if you fit into, then you'd be able to apply for up to £1,500. But just all students can apply for up to £500. And again, I think this is something that Lauren did, so I can tell you a little bit more about her shorter kind of experience of volunteering abroad there. The third option that's available at the moment, we have applications open already, is for virtual volunteering placements. So again, this funding comes from Santander universities and Goldsmiths, and this is actually an opportunity to build your skills from home. So you might find a kind of charity that you want to work with who are looking for someone to support remotely. So even within London, I've seen opportunities like this with helping kind of with website development or remote kind of counselling services, talking to people over the phone, for example. There are lots of different opportunities creating projects, and Malika is going to talk a little bit more about her experience of working with an NGO remotely last summer. The critical thing with this is that it should involve interacting virtually with participants across the world. The whole point is that you're gaining an experience of a organisation outside of the UK, ideally, with people from different countries and cultures, so that you can build those skills and experience. And it's really just a good opportunity to gain that kind of international, intercultural experience. Again, all students can apply for up to £500 towards the placement fees for a virtual volunteering placement, and again up to £1,500 if you meet our widening participation criteria. So some more funding there, and applications for I'll tell you how to apply shortly, but applications for virtual are open right now. So that's a good thing. It's something you can already start looking at. So I think now, just to give you a bit more flavour of kind of what the placements are like and the kind of experiences that it involves, I'm going to ask Lauren and Malika I'll start with Lauren. So Lauren, if you'd like to turn your camera on, that would be fantastic. And hopefully everyone can see you there. So we'll just ask a few questions, and if people have questions in the chat for Lauren or Malika, then do drop them in, and we can cover them as well. But Lauren, do you just want to introduce yourself, kind of what you studied? I know you're left Goldsmiths now, so a little bit about what you're doing now, and then we can go on to your placement.
So I studied at Goldsmiths from 2016 to 2019. I was an anthropology undergrad. Now I'm working as a teaching assistant in Spain, and also working for a project in Greece that kind of came from the opportunities I took from the funds at Goldsmiths. So I can talk more about that as we go on.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's really great. And I'm so glad that you're teaching abroad in Spain. That's exciting. I wish I do you want to give us a little bit of an idea of, I know you did two kind of projects. Tell us a little bit more about them.
Okay, so initially it was in the second year of my degree. I applied for the Santander Go Abroad grant, and I went to Greece and volunteered with an education project that was working in kind of like grassroots housing facilities for migrants and refugees in Athens. I was there for about 6 weeks. My main responsibilities there were teaching English, supporting like the kind of maintenance of the project, and then that also kind of fed in as my dissertation research. So particularly in my undergrad, you were allowed to take an extended dissertation. So my research from that placement then was applied in my dissertation as well. And then the second time around, basically following the research I completed for my dissertation and the kind of networks I built in Athens, I returned to Athens and worked with an NGO as an English teacher. So I was doing about 20 hours a week. I received, I think, 2 months Erasmus funding, but I stayed for about 3.5. So I returned in September, not of last year, the year before, and stayed until January. Um, so yeah, of course, that was actually post my graduation at that point. So I graduated in the June, July time, and then I returned to Greece in the September.
Fantastic. And what did you gain from the two experiences that was helpful?
So many things, I suppose. Of course, like first of all, it's like the experience of like teaching in these contexts. I was very keen to support these kind of projects. So even after my initial placement on return to the UK, I continued volunteering with similar projects in London. So for example, in Hackney and also Lewisham. And of course, all of this linked into my like further research for my degree. And then continuing on, of course, I returned, worked with a similar project. And now to put things into context, I'm working for a research cooperative in Greece. And one of our main areas of focus is actually research on the situation of like migration within Greece. So I'm actually the only international member of that team. So of course, I think that really highlights kind of how the connections that I built from these projects kind of led me in a certain direction. And yeah, also like the virtual nature of it. Now I'm living in Spain, but still working with this project. So
that's wonderful. Yeah, it's so great to hear that. It's kind of really rewarding to hear that kind of question and to see how it shaped, because I know my international experience shaped my career. So it's really great to see that happening to someone else as well. It sounds like you probably had lots of highlights, but can you pick out one highlight and maybe a challenge from? I'm sure there were also lots of challenges as well.
Of course, I think my highlight is the kind of the people I've met and the kind of experiences I've had that definitely went on to shape not only my like undergraduate degree, but also the kind of decisions I've taken beyond that. It definitely showed me like what my priority areas were, the kind of work I wanted to do, and those values for me. Of course, the challenge of it was particularly the first time I went to Greece. There were a lot of things that were in the unknown. It was my first time working outside of the UK. It was a very intense project just because of the nature of the context. But I think that really helped me develop skills, particularly regarding resilience. And it really forced me to learn about teaching on the spot, which has then kind of continued to be part of like my career and volunteering experiences ever since. So
great. Yeah, so kind of even though there were slight challenges, it was they kind of benefited.
Useful challenges.
Yeah, exactly. And were there any barriers that almost prevented you from applying? You know, we're trying to, I guess, like encourage as many students as possible to sign up. And yeah, were there any things that kind of almost put you off, and how did you get past them?
Well, particularly for me, it was the nature of going to do a project that was so in the unknown. Luckily, kind of through the context I had in my degree, because someone also on my degree, her family was involved in projects in Greece, so that provided like a bridge in a sense. But also like for me, like the financial side of it as well was a little complicated because of course I had a house that I was renting in London at the time because I'm from Manchester and I was also working. So that was a situation that I had to navigate. But I basically managed to come to an agreement with my boss at the time so I could finance doing the two things. And of course, basically gaining the funding from Goldsmiths was a necessity for me in many senses. So those barriers were I was definitely able to work around them through like practical conversations with people about that.
That's really helpful advice. And I would say that every year we do get kind of students who maybe start the process and get to a certain point and then panic and think, oh my goodness, like this is too much. And I would like urge anyone who applies and gets to that point to really both speak to us, or we can help facilitate conversations, you know, even with kind of employers or with your with the placement providers to say, oh, you know, funding is coming, or, you know, there's, I don't know, I really can't urge people enough to kind of say, you know, talk to people and kind of ask that question, is it possible to kind of postpone this for a little bit, or to change, or to be flexible? Because I think that's really important. So yeah, Thank you for highlighting that, Lauren. And what advice would you give to students considering applying in the future?
I think my advice would be it's just definitely something that's worth going for, because not only has it shaped like many parts of my decisions in the future, but also it just became like a very crucial experience for me, particularly in terms of learning about myself and coming to understand exactly what I want to do. Of course, even now, someone who's graduated a year and a half later, I can't say that's clear, but I can definitely say that the making those choices to go abroad has impacted me in a way that I'm like very happy about. So
fantastic. Okay, well, thank you very much. And if anyone has any questions for Lauren, and I'll come back to you in a second potentially, Lauren, for if you think of anything else you'd like to say as a closing remark. But I'll just want to introduce Malika to talk about her experience. And yeah, as I said to everyone else, please do put questions in the chat if you have any. But Malika, do you be able to turn your camera on and say hello as well?
Hi.
And yeah, do you just want to introduce yourself and what you're studying and kind of give a little bit of background to yourself? That would be fantastic.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Malika, and I'm studying at Erasmus, studying psychology. I'm in my second year at the moment, and I completed a virtual internship abroad during the summer of my first year. So as soon as COVID hit.
Yeah, you were one of the early adopters of our Virtual Global Opportunities program. So do you want to give a little bit more information about what you did during your time?
Sure. So I worked for a non-profit in South Africa, and a lot of my duties were administrative, so helping them with making their modules more uniform. What was really lovely was that their modules were created by existing or previous students for other students, and it was for at-risk kids that were school age, so were at school but struggling, or were school age and dropped out of school. And I was given a new project every week, which was really lovely. I got to meet with my manager every week, so I was really in touch with them, and it was just making sure that everything was running smoothly and that I could bring forward any new ideas I had.
And how did it work virtually for you? How did that structure look like?
Yeah, so it was good. One of the important factors for me was that I wouldn't have to wake up too early. So I think South Africa was perfect because we're only an hour ahead or behind, I've forgotten. But that was definitely a consideration. I had to think about this time difference that I wouldn't have, obviously, if I was there myself. And I also needed to think about sort of making sure I was comfortable with these new software, and making sure that I could keep in contact and checking my emails regularly, and checking for meetings, keeping alarms on my phone as well, because it's different. You know, if I was in the office, I can't forget that I have a meeting, but definitely sitting at home doing my work, you could get carried away. So it was definitely things to consider like that.
That's so true. I mean, it sounds really silly, but I hadn't even thought about the time difference in terms of, when the working day works. So yeah. Yeah, that's really the really critical thing to think about when you're maybe thinking about looking for a placement. What did you gain from the experience?
Just like Lauren said, gained a lot. I would also agree that it was the connections that I made. They were really lovely people, and I'm still in contact with them. I'm also a program ambassador for the company, essentially, that gave me the internship, and hopefully once I can go out, that will also help me with that, in terms of having pre-existing contacts, so I feel a lot safer, and it would probably be more enjoyable as well, knowing people already. So that's definitely invaluable. I wouldn't have gotten that if I hadn't taken the chance, really.
Yeah, that's so funny. So you're thinking of going out to South Africa when it's possible to travel?
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Fantastic. Oh, keep us updated on that. And what a highlight and a challenge from your experience, if you could share one of them.
My highlight, if I had to whittle it down to one, would probably be the module that I created. So one of the tasks that I got was to create a module for girls and young women, specifically targeting them with issues that they felt weren't being addressed, perhaps academically, but mostly real life situations. So the module I created was sort of to give the girls the chance to understand the issues that they were facing, like bullying and how to overcome it, the types of bullying, and also information that isn't particularly taught at school, with regards to sex education and sexual health. That can be quite taboo in a lot of places, really. And one of the things was also the lack of role models. So I made sure that I included Black, female, specifically African role models throughout the module. So every other page was a little biography on women that had broken barriers and done something really awesome. And there's a lot definitely to showcase, but it's just giving these girls like a tangible idea of, that nothing's impossible. And that was definitely a highlight, and it ended up being 90 modules, and it's being taught to them now, which is really nice.
Wow.
Yeah. I think the challenge for me was the virtual side of it. So it's a blessing and a curse for sure. It definitely allowed me to do it, but there are issues with connectivity, communication. You might be talking over one another, and some days they'd have total blackouts with internet, so meetings weren't possible, or they're connecting through mobile data because there's no Wi-Fi. So stuff like that for sure, but it really keeps you on your toes and makes you adaptable at the same time. So it's a challenge and a good thing.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's those kind of challenges do happen on a day-to-day basis with working remotely. But fantastic, and I would urge. In fact, Lauren's got a case study on our Go Abroad blog as well, but Malika's got a blog and her own blog, and please do go and read it, because there's some of those that information about the different kind of role models that you shared is really, really interesting to read and very inspiring. Were there any barriers that almost prevented you from applying? That's kind of the question to what I asked Lauren.
Yeah. I guess it definitely was the funding side. So I looked for internships myself through Go Abroad or Go Overseas. And considering the price tag was something that I needed to think about, and it was almost a barrier. But I did apply to funding through Santander. And I knew I was under the widening participation criteria, but if I hadn't been, then yeah, that would have been a barrier that I may not have been able to overcome for sure. Yeah,
so the cost again is a real challenge, and I would say, yeah, obviously look at our funding availability, but the team, me and the colleagues in the team, Jack and Shannon, we're always happy to also talk through kind of if you're worried about funding and how there are also ways to break it down, or there might be other ways to kind of find additional funding if you needed to. But I think potentially also looking for the right opportunity, Malika, from the sounds of it, kind of working out which ones, we'll talk about in a second about how to find a placement size, but don't always look at the first thing that you find, because there are lots of different opportunities out there. And yeah, what advice would you consider giving to students applying?
I guess maybe 2 or 3 things. The first would definitely be just to go for it and don't overthink it too much. The rewards are just numerous, and they definitely outnumber any costs. So definitely go for it. And also the second thing would be to, like Eduardo said, kind of shop around. Don't think that the first one you come across has to be that one. Even if it does sound perfect, look around. There are always really interesting places and opportunities out there. And I guess the third thing would be to use the support around you. So I spoke a lot actually to Eduardo and Shannon at Go Abroad, and speaking to people around you, kind of using the support is really helpful and informative. So take advantage of it, I guess.
That's really great advice. Thanks, Malika, and thanks for sharing. Thanks to you and Lauren for sharing your kind of stories. I think I was going to have a quick rounding up now, but I think what we'll do is I'll carry on with the slides, and then at the end, if we all put our cameras on, then if people have questions, then you can ask us directly. But yeah, thanks again, Malika, and thanks again, Lauren. If I carry on to the next slide, I'm just going to give a little bit of guidance on actually finding a placement, which I appreciate can be one of the barriers to students actually participating. So the first few things to think about are kind of identify appropriate opportunities, do some research, do some self-assessment. So what are you looking to gain? What do you want to get from the opportunity? What are your career aspirations? What skills would you like and experiences would you like to gain? Is there a specific sector that you're interested in? We've heard a bit about kind of volunteering and kind of migration, refugee communities, under education. Maybe you're interested in policy or in conservation. Kind of hone down that kind of initial idea of what area you want to kind of volunteer in. What kind of placement would suit you? Is it kind of more admin based volunteering? Is it more hands-on? Is it technical? What skills do you have that you could actually kind of share with an organization that they might be able to kind of benefit from you from as well? Where in the world would you like to go? If you're doing a virtual one, then maybe also consider that time difference. You know, what times would your working day be? Have a think about that. And do you want to speak or learn any new languages? That's something to consider. You know, you might need the language to communicate, or you might want to actually go to another country to really develop your language skills as well. So a few things to think about in advance. With volunteering in particular, it's important to kind of reflect on your reasons for volunteering abroad. You know, why have you chosen that? What particular things are you looking to gain? What's your kind of rationale behind that? And then when you're choosing a kind of an organization to volunteer abroad with, and think about kind of representation. How are people being represented on the website and in the marketing materials? Kind of avoid organizations that talk about kind of volunteers saving the world, and look for emphasis on partnerships and change being made from within. Kind of something else that might be important to look for is community ownership. Who's the project? Who asked for the project to be set up? Is it responding to kind of locally defined need? Who's in charge? And is it kind of being organised by local people if possible? You know, ideally that's a good thing to look for. Sustainability as well. A project that's creating long-term dependency on volunteers may have a negative impact on the community it's working in fact. And so just check that it's again linked to a kind of a long-standing relationship with the community, and using kind of volunteers to add capacity if possible. Other things to think about are the impact. What's the impact on the local community? Not just about the positive impact on volunteers as well. What are the kind of costs of the volunteers and displacements? Or something else to think about. All of this information is on our Go Abroad webpage, so definitely worth looking at in more detail and having a think about it. What kind of recruitment process is there? What's the application process? A kind of training and support for you so that you get appropriate support with these opportunities, and where do the finances go? Kind of, you know, what's kind of if you're paying a fee, kind of where's that funding going? Something else as well about kind of orphanage volunteering as well that's worth thinking about is that sometimes it can turn into kind of an industry rather than actually being for a force for good. So I know quite a lot of people think about, oh, maybe I'd quite like to volunteer with young people in an orphanage, for example. Just investigate that kind of opportunity in a lot of detail before doing so. Maybe talk to Dee, come and talk to us in the Go Abroad team, and just have a think about it. Maybe talk to colleagues in your department before doing anything like that, because you just want to make sure that you're actually supporting an organisation and the cause that's doing good. Again, have a look at the value and the mission, and are these the same as yours? Just some things to really think about when you're kind of planning that. In terms of how to find a placement, so some good places to start. Speak to the careers service. They have a whole host, and Dee, we're going to have actually an international volunteering drop-in in March, so we'll keep you updated on that. But Dee is potentially a good place to start in terms of volunteering guidance, but also within the career service, there's other people who can support in terms of finding placements. Ask your department. And I think even friends and colleagues, so I think Lauren mentioned that one of her friends had links with organisations in Greece, and our departmental colleagues and academics, they may also have links into different countries as well. We've got a how to find a placement, an international placement page on the Go Abroad website, which has some links, which I'm going to show you in a second. And then also you could get in touch directly with an organisation that you're interested in working with as well, and I'll go into more detail around that. Here are some initial some initial websites to look at, and I will be sending the slides around afterwards if you signed up through the website, or I'll try and get your details off Teams as well. But here are some useful websites to look at. So the UN have an excellent online volunteering website that have a lot of different opportunities on there. Erasmusintern.org. So for European, this will be a mixture of work placements and some volunteering as well, but definitely a good place to look for Erasmus internships that could be unfunded under that kind of 2 to 3 month work abroad funding model. The International Voluntary Service have a lot of kind of affordable grassroots volunteer opportunities. They also share information about the European Solidarity Corps, which is another funded kind of international opportunity, which is focused on volunteering. A couple of organisations, so International Assistance Service and VSO International, are both kind of highly reputable volunteering kind of projects supported by the UK government. So that might be something, those might be things to look into as well. And then websites that kind of have different opportunities advertised on them. So BUNAC, work abroad, summer camp and volunteering opportunities. The British Council, as Lauren said, she's doing a British Council teaching assistantship at the moment, but there may be some volunteering opportunities on their website as well. And then something at the end that I actually did a few years ago, WWOOFing, which is working on organic farms. And I would say there's maybe a little bit of caution with this one, that you really need to make sure that you find the kind of right kind of organisation to work with on that one. But I did volunteer on a farm, and it was you know, I gained a lot of skills from it. So that's another thing, if you wanted to try some kind of outdoor kind of more outdoor focused volunteering, then that's something to consider as well. In terms of how to approach an organisation, so obviously the traditional approach of responding to an advertised opportunity or a kind of notice on a website. You could approach speculatively, so you could ask whether they have a suitable job for you via email, send a cover letter and a CV. You know, sometimes it's just worth sending something and getting in touch. You might use your network like social media or LinkedIn, or follow them on Instagram. Lots of different kind of ways of doing that. So just have a think about that, and yeah, you can be quite creative in the ways to approach different organizations. Yeah, and then if I just go on to the kind of support that you will receive from us in terms of kind of taking advantage of this opportunity. Obviously, I've talked about the funding and the kind of support in terms of finding placements, but once you've been accepted, this is the kind of support you'll receive. So you will receive a pre-departure briefing where we'll talk through things such as, you know, planning for your departure, things to prepare, paperwork to do before you leave, considering how to settle in and build those relationships when you get there, and a chance for you to ask any questions and just to go through the kind of paperwork you need to get the funding, for example. We provide a guidance handbook, and we have web pages with lots of different kind of support information on there, including guidance on kind of finding good insurance, mental health support, support with travel, and kind of looking for good travel deals, for example. We also do a check-in whilst you're abroad, and don't forget that you can still access the support services at Goldsmiths. So you can, for example, talk to the wellbeing team. You could talk to, if you had a disability, you could talk to the disability team about the kind of support you might need whilst abroad. And when you come back from your time abroad, we also try to do a returners and careers event as well, to kind of support you to gain kind of from that, kind of reflect and gain on that experience as well. Something to think about whilst abroad as well is kind of diversity in terms of opinions, in terms of attitudes, in terms of the people around you. We do kind of try to talk to you and help you to think about that in advance, but it is definitely something to think about. You know, if you feel that you need specific support or kind of want to find people of similar identities, for example, if LGBTQ+, for example, it's definitely worth doing some guidance, some kind of looking for some guidance or looking for support in advance of going. So we actually have some pages on our website in terms of different students from different identities and giving guidance around that. If you need specific food types, for example, or there's specific kind of, I don't know, organisations that you want to access while you're abroad, then definitely something to think about, and we're happy to talk that through with you as well before you go. And something actually that Malika mentioned in terms of like kind of using that support of the people around you, we you know, when there's a group of people going abroad, if you're feeling alienated and alone, which sometimes can happen whilst you're abroad, it's important to talk to those people around you and to share those kind of concerns or worries. We're here to help, but there might be other students going abroad who can also form part of that community with you, and you could kind of message and say, I'm like, you know, I'm in my second week, finding it a bit difficult, or I'm at home on this virtual opportunity and just feeling a bit alienated, the internet's not working, and you can share those problems with each other and kind of really support each other. So that's something we're going to try and do this year, is to really link people up a little bit more across the different programs as well. And I mentioned already mental health support. We do have information on our web pages. Student Minds provides some really good guidance on supporting yourself kind of from a mental health point of view. And again, we do talk about this in the pre-departure briefing to kind of support you through that. So just some things that the team can help while you're taking part. Another thing to think about is that you could do this as part of the Gold Award, in particular the study and work abroad, the placements abroad. You could use a Go Abroad activity as part of your Gold Award and use it towards gaining that. So if you don't know what the Gold Award is, it's a kind of a professional development program here at Goldsmiths. It's a chance to increase your self-awareness, to understand your strengths and areas for improvement. You can use it to gain kind of recognition for co-curricular activities, and will really make you kind of something to put on your CV, and will really be valuable in terms of your career development and kind of make you stand out from others. And it also helps you kind of reflect on your experiences and kind of put them towards your career. And again, you're part of a supportive community of students. So do think about doing the Gold Award as well, and you can do this and one of these kind of programs as part of your activity. Right, how to get involved. So I think I mentioned already that virtual global opportunities, we have already launched the funding for that. So for all funding, we have an online application form, and you'll need to submit that form, which includes asking for kind of information about you, information about the placement that you want to do. In general, we'll ask that you have some kind of confirmation that you have been accepted onto the placement, whether it's a volunteer placement or a study placement or a virtual global opportunities. You'll have to have some kind of confirmation that it's going ahead. We won't, if you haven't paid, if you can't pay for it, if you can't afford to pay for it up front, that's completely understandable. You can say that you can show an email that you have kind of been in touch with the organisation and that they're happy to accept your application, and then we can kind of pay you the funding, and then you can pay them. That can be one way around it. So something to think about. Yeah, then we ask, there's a motivational statement, which is really good to spend a little bit of time on. So think about kind of why you want to go, what skills and experience you're going to gain, what skills and experience do you have that make you suitable for the opportunity, and yeah, how it's going to support your future career and your academic kind of development as well. So we've got some guidance on how to write an application on the Go Abroad blog and on our website. We'll also be doing drop-ins in March, application drop-ins, and you can also just email us directly, or you could go to the careers service to talk to them about how to write a really good application. As I mentioned already, students who meet our Go Abroad widening participation criteria, they will be eligible for additional funding, so please check that out. And in general, a priority is for students who meet the widening participation criteria and have not had international experience before and have not already received Go Abroad funding for Goldsmiths. But I would urge everybody to apply and to get involved so that we can kind of support as many of you as possible to go abroad. So next steps, visit our Go Abroad website, have a look at the different opportunities, sign up for our Global Opportunities newsletter and Go Abroad VLE, start applying for virtual global opportunities if you're interested in that. We are hoping to launch applications for all of the kind of funding for work abroad and the shorter term placements at the beginning of March, so keep an eye out for that. We will be running a Go Abroad week the second week of March, starting on the 8th of March, so we'll have more events during that week. start researching destinations and getting excited if that's possible at the moment under the coronavirus rules. It feels so strange to kind of not be able to consider going abroad, but it's definitely worth looking out there, maybe making contact with some organisations and seeing what's available. You could arrange a meeting with careers to discuss opportunities further, or to think about maybe how to write an application. And do read our Go Abroad blog. Malika and Lauren are both featured on it, and there's some really kind of inspiring stories on there that might encourage, kind of give you some ideas of what you might want to do over the summer. I think that is everything from me. I'll have a couple of minutes for questions, and maybe Dee could stop the recording in a second. But just to say, here is our email address, goabroad@gold.ac.uk. The website, as I said already, is Go Abroad on the Goldsmiths website. And I'm just going to share an evaluation form, which I'd be really grateful if you could, let me just get it copy it into the chat, just to let me know how the presentation went, so that hopefully it was useful for you and you found it interesting. And yeah, sign up to our newsletter and check out the blog site as well. I think that is everything from me. Lauren and